What is going on, people? Verno with you. Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter Live. We got a good one tonight. We're going to be talking about the 1981 camp slasher, The Burning. All right. What is going on, people? Welcome to the show. Again, we're talking about The Burning tonight. We got a couple of the friends in the house. What up, Phable? What up, Lynk? How you guys doing?
Chilling, brother.
Hell yeah. It is good to be here. I think this will be quite a fun conversation because I like having you guys on from you guys are good at dissecting films, like really picking stuff apart. And I think this is a really, in my opinion, a really fun one to do that with because it has things I love about the movie and things that like drive me nuts about the movie that could make it like one of the one of the best 80s horror movies. There's things that hold it back that I think are glaring that I think you guys in particular are going to be fun to kind of break this one down with. Neither of you guys had seen this one before, right?
No.
Nope. I've heard of this through
Mhm.
passing. I was gonna say over the years, but it's probably just through you, Dylan, and Robbie over the
Mm.
last 3 years, honestly. But I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Right. I feel like it was the same for me that until I got deeper into horror and people that are new to this channel or joining are going to hear me say that a lot. When I got newer to horror and I got way deeper into it, it's one that comes up quite a bit, especially when you're talking 80s slashers. It's at the top of a lot of lists for especially uh 80s slashers that don't have a remake or don't have a sequel. Like it's a rarity among that crowd, probably because it's less like it would be might as well just remake Friday the 13th because it's such a rip off of that. It's got its own ways that it's different and unique that definitely make it special and a reason why people still talk about it. It just got one of the reasons why we're doing this week is because this 4K just came out this week. So clearly, it's still a movie. I don't want to say it's cult classic. It's a little bit bigger than a cult classic. It's kind of a favorite among diehard 80s slasher fans. So I did want to kind of start there with you guys. What is I know a little bit of the 80s slashers that you guys like, but what is like your appetite for them? I know a little bit more about like the big franchises, Freddie, Michael, and Jason. Or actually, I'm not even sure where you guys stand completely on those. But just in general, what is your guys' appetite and palate like for 80s slashers? Whoever wants to jump in first.
um, for me personally, 80s slashers. I mean, they're okay. They're not really my cup of tea.
Mhm.
I'm more into I guess a sci-fi monster supernatural demon type thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
The killer thing. Um, you named all the best ones, and those are favorites of mine. But this is why I never heard of The Burning and stuff like this. Some of these movies that we've been watching because I probably just watched the best slashers. You know what I mean, or what are considered the top. But I've never dived in so much that I've heard of The Burning
Hmm.
or Martin or any of these other slasher movies.
Right. Steph.
I'm pretty much same ground as Fable. I enjoy the classics, the Freddys, the Jasons, Michael Myers, all that stuff. Um, I was gonna say probably my favorite slasher is Scream, and that's the '90s.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I definitely have seen the iconic '80s stuff as opposed to the offshoots, the less popular stuff.
Right. Have either of you guys seen, speaking more like into camp slashers, like sleepaway camp? Or I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, there's like a shitload of them. And then like I thought more about it, and like there's not too many
Not too many.
of the camp slashers. It becomes this big like subgenre of horror and a subgenre of the slasher subgenre. But it's like I look and there's not that many really popular ones. There's probably a couple that are escaping me. But have you got either of you seen any with the sleepaway camps?
Yeah, I've seen Sleepaway Camp for sure. Sleepaway Camp.
I don't think I have.
Sleepaway Camp for me. I mean, just right off the rip is a little better than this one
Hmm.
to me for 80 slasher. I enjoy that one more. It has the camp element, the kids, and the sex and all that stuff. But there's something more original about Sleepaway Camp than the
Right.
others, you know.
Yeah, I kind of look at this one. There's like these waves of the slasher boom. and this is the first wave of the slasher boom. And I imagine the producers behind this, which are the Weinstein brothers, which is definitely something I want to get into a little bit later. I've
They
got a
helped
whole
write the story as well.
I got a whole theory on Harvey Weinstein when it comes to the film that added a whole nother layer of complexity to me. And it doesn't make it a better film, but it sure as shit made it more interesting to me watching through it. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I really see them as like, okay, what's the quickest way to make a buck? That right there, Friday the 13th. We can replicate that. And there's a lot of ways, in my opinion, that I think it does it better in certain ways, and it's not as original. But to your point, Fable, there's like this first wave, it's just copycats for the most part. And then like 83, 84, around the time that Sleepaway Camp comes out, people are kind of getting sick of the copycats, and you start getting more creative and more original, more camp. Like this movie takes itself a lot more serious than Sleepaway Camp, clearly, or even like look at like we talked about Child's Play a couple weeks ago on the channel. That's towards the very tail end of the slasher boom, and they're getting fucking wild with it. They've got voodoo curses and it's a lot more original and creative, and that's definitely one of the things you could point at this movie as like one of its biggest flaws that you could just be like it's just not original, and it's got that. I agree with you,
and that's more my style too. Like I was just saying, like I like supernatural stuff. Like all of those guys are supernatural. Freddy, Jason, Chucky, all of them. So it makes sense that I gravitate to those guys.
And
Hell
this
yeah.
is we it's a not I don't say weird, but it's different than taking inspiration and homaging something as opposed to ripping it off. Like movie we covered last week for my birthday, Dead Snow 2. That was more of a inspiration, homage to Evil Dead, while this is more of a rip-off of Friday the 13th.
It's blending. Dead Snow is blending multiple genres and multiple influences. You've got the Shaun of the Dead, you've got the zombies, you've got World War II flicks, and mix it all together. This is let's make a Friday the 13th with a guy. Well, it's like you said before we got rolling. For people that aren't sure when this came out, and I'm really curious about, like, I tried to look into it. Like, this came out a week after Friday the 13th Part 2. And when you look at these two movies, the similarities are striking. Like, specifically the campfire scenes. They do it 2 times in The Burning. That scene is the exact same scene in Friday 2, where they're talking about this urban legend. And then at the end of the urban legend, a person in a mask jumps out. So I almost feel like there's someone that was in the writer's room for both of these. Someone, Harvey Weinstein, is hiding in the closet at the Friday the 13th office, or something was going on. But I mean, it's one of the things where you have to kind of give credit to The Burning of saying, like, it only had the first Friday the 13th to go off of. And then, like, if you look at the other slashes at the time, obviously there's debate on if Texas Chainsaw is a slasher, Alice, Sweet Alice, movies like that. But then there's Prom Night that came out the year before this. And I think Terror Train came out this same year, but don't quote me on that one. But the thing that this does differently than those is the gore and the kills, which is definitely something we'll get into. It's got a big leg up on all those other ones. And even Friday the 13th, I almost wanted to watch that one again before doing this review, but I do plan on doing something with that in the fairly near future. So I didn't want to jump into it too soon, but I was kind of really trying to compare them. Like, what's gorier? In my opinion, it feels like this is much gorier than Friday the 13th. Did you guys get that vibe? By the way, it's done by Tom Savini, the makeup effects. He did Friday the 13th and Dawn of the Dead. He didn't do Friday 2 so that he could do this, because he thought the idea of bringing Jason back was fucking stupid. And you can tell from interviews, he still is kind of anti-Jason, even though he came back to the franchise in Part 4. But you guys agree this is a little gorier than most early 80s slashers or 80s slashers in general?
There were a few, I will say there were a few, I was looking, I was like, 1981, huh? It was like, there's a few eye-catching gore scenes, in particular, the raft scene, where the 3 kids are trying to get the raft to come out towards them, or the canoe, and he, like, jumps out the water, and it's like 2 guys and a girl he just hit.
Right.
But
now, I want to ask you guys that. Had you guys heard of the raft scene before watching this movie?
No.
Or was it just that scene came out of nowhere? That's something for me. I've actually have that scene in a clip, And a little bit later, we're gonna do a full breakdown on that fucking scene because it's become the reason why people talk about this movie. And we'll get into it. I definitely see why. I definitely fucking see why.
Yeah.
It's just fucking like a frenzy of violence that you don't get in a lot of movies. But for me, that's the big thing about that this movie that I had heard going into it. So I'm waiting for the raft scene. I'm waiting for it. I'm like, oh, this is it. It's about to happen. So we'll get into it a little bit later. But I'll just say it was really built up in a big way to me. But
did it live up to the hype?
No. I guess that's what it is. There's things that are fucking badass about it.
Yeah.
We'll get into the whole thing, but I think it's exactly that. It had been hyped up so much that I was like, oh, okay. I get why it was hyped up, but like I wish it wasn't hyped up that much for me.
Right.
But I kind of skipped over some of the stuff I wanted to mention. The man that directed this was a British guy, which shocked me when I listened to the commentary. I was like, oh, I did not expect that. So his name is Tony Malum, if I'm pronouncing that right. He doesn't have a whole lot to his credit, but we just covered a Rutger Hauer movie a few weeks ago with you guys, The Hitcher, and I saw that he did the 1992 Rutger Hauer film Split Second. I don't know if either of you guys know that one. I do not, but I was curious. No?
Nope, never seen it.
And then just the cast real quick. We'll get into the more later, but were you guys surprised to see George Costanza in here? Both of you?
Yeah.
Yo,
There's a
and
lot
the
of people.
dude from Short Circuit.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of
yeah.
people.
Fisher
Yeah.
Stevens, Holly Hunter. Maybe you guys can school me on this. Holly Hunter is in this movie, and I've watched it a few times, and I watched it recently specifically looking for her. I can't find her. I don't know who she is in this movie.
I did not notice Holly Hunter in this movie at all.
Yeah,
honestly.
me neither.
She's in the
credits.
girl. She might be the girl with the short hair. They're like that.
I know what you're talking about. That's a different actress. She
Yeah.
stands out to me too. She had just come off Broadway where she was doing Annie, which you can see. Like you'd be like, oh yeah, she'd be a good fit for that. But yeah, I was just kind of curious if you guys had seen Holly Hunter in this movie.
No, I was once I realized the dude, because I peeped George Costanza, but once I realized the other dude was like, I was like, oh.
No problem, dude. I'll just jump in while we wait for Steph to finish his thoughts. The Rotten Tomatoes score, 75%, which it really intrigues me that this has a way higher Rotten Tomatoes score than Friday the 13th Part 2, which is I kind of want to visit these two movies. I might one day do a video just comparing these two films, the similarities, the difference, and why the critics think The Burning is so much better than Friday Part 2 is interesting to me. But IMDb is 6.3, Google user rating of 90%. And then I almost think I should quit mentioning the budget and the box office for these movies because I don't understand this shit at all. It says it's got a budget of 1.5 million and a box office of half that at 700,000. But I watched all the special features in this and 1.5 of the two commentaries. And one thing that's repeated over and over and over is that this was a big financial success for the Weinsteins and Miramax, and it's really what got them rolling, and everybody made a bunch of money off this. So I don't know.
Maybe the box office was 700,000, but the video rental game
it's got to be.
Yeah, where they made the money. Like
it's got to be.
The boom right there. That's the kind of movie you would buy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a bunch of Cropsy toys floating around and T-shirts of The Burning everywhere. I'm sure you can get them, but it's not like they were making a lot of money off that.
I'm curious what was like the poster or like the video that the image they used, the face cover for the VHS or something, because like I'm thinking back to like the VHS days, and that's definitely like something that would have caught my eye, like The Burning. I'm like checking it out.
I think this is it. I could totally be wrong. Okay. I know this image, the one that you see in the background where it's the hedge clippers up, that's like the image that they always use for the film, but I think this might be it might be the original poster art. Listeners, let me know if I'm wrong. Real quickly, I did want to mention, I did put it in the title, and while I've got this in my hand, I was going to do like a very quick review on this Blu-ray, specifically this new release that just came out. If I can get that bad boy up in there. It comes with a slip. It's got a non-reversible dealio on the inside, so it's the same art on the inside. The transfer, I sat there for a while today watching this movie on Shudder and then going back and watching the same scene on the Xbox in 4K just to kind of see what I could see. for me, it looks like a really nice transfer. I don't have much to go on, but it looks really fucking nice. The thing I wanted to point out for people that own this on Blu-ray already, all the special features were already on the 2007 Blu-ray release. So it's got 2 commentaries, one with the director and one with a couple of the stars who play really small roles. They're both good. I enjoyed those a lot. There's a Tom Savini little documentary about his involvement in the film. Really good. If you like Tom Savini, it's a must watch. And then a couple, I think there's 2 or 3 interviews with other people that were on the crew, get cast members and stuff. So for me, it was a solid purchase, mainly because I don't own the Blu-ray. So if you're a stickler for resolution and you want to upgrade, then you're going to upgrade anyway. But if you want to upgrade to get some bonus features in that, I definitely wouldn't do it for that. And then again, the other cover is, in my opinion, way fucking cooler. There's this other cover with like he's up here cutting people, and then it runs into a river of blood that flows through the scene. It's probably a lot cooler in my opinion. But I did want to get that out of the way and kind of squeeze that in here because I thought it was something of note because this bad boy just came out last week. But you guys got anything you want to jump into the plot here? Start going through this bad boy.
Fable.
What do you mean? If I got
if you guys, did you guys want to throw any background information, right? Anything that you guys had on it before we move on?
It's funny you mentioned that. I don't know what made me look at. I think you know what it was that made me start looking up info on this movie was I was watching. I was like, this is reminding me a lot of Friday the 13th Part 2, and so I'm looking at the information on it. I'm finding out that it's produced and written by the Weinstein brothers, which I found very interesting.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
There's a lot of talent involved with this movie. Tom Savini,
I was kind of shocked.
Weinstein, all the actors that they got in there early, very there. There's quite a few actors in there. Not all of them are super big, but they all went on to do other things for sure.
Right. A shitload of them. Yeah. Costanza's standing out the most. And in my opinion, he kind of steals, he just pops. It's one of those things we've talked about in the past before. Is he popping off the screen because I know him from Seinfeld? Or is just because the kid's got it? You know what I mean? Like I can't tell, but he really stands out in the movie. He's annoying at times too. Oh yeah, like that's kind of his go-to. Someone will say something and he'll come back with them and say it like that, and like it gets a little old, but still you can see the talent at that early age. But
the kid, the weirdo kid, I've seen him in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, he went on after this to perform on Broadway. He played Woody Allen. Woody Allen. He played Woody Allen on Broadway and won a Tony. So he's another super talented guy that's in this movie. This guy that you see on the bottom right of the screen, the bully in the film, he's actually one of the editors on the film. There's an interview with him, and he's like such an intelligent, theater guy. It's so funny. Really? He's just like he just dove into this part, being the bully. It's really
he has the best line in the movie to me.
Which one?
Where he tells that guy rowing the boat, where he tells the girl he's trying to get on the girl and she won't let him, and he's like, "Get the fuck out of my face!"
Yeah, and then he bends his mouth into like this super pout kind of a thing and sweat. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. But all right, so let's get into this thing. I have a few little videos to go through that hopefully won't be too janky as we go through them. The film opens up. I look at it like this. This is everybody. There's a formula from Halloween. Halloween set the standard for this stuff. Friday the 13th is the one that cracked the code because there wasn't the slasher boom with Halloween. You didn't get the boom until after Friday the 13th. They're like teens, sex, blood. You know what I mean? They laid out the formula. And this clearly goes off that. And one of the key pieces of the formula is you have to have something from the past. With Michael Myers, it's the best that's ever been done with that. Where, obviously, you know that story. And then you look, what did we see that we reviewed together that came out before this? Terror Train. That's to say, I think Terror Train and Prom Night both came before this, and they're both examples of the prank gone wrong. And this becomes a huge trope in slasher movies. And to me, it's one of the lazier ways to do it. It's never as interesting as what they did in Halloween, or
Right.
you could say what they did in Friday the 13th with Jason and making it like a mystery that the way that they did. So to me, it's not like, again, there's nothing overly original about this one, but it is one of the earlier ones to do it. And so we get this scene here. We open up, we've got our campers, and basically what we find out about this Cropsy guy is he's hated. Everybody hates this janitor that works here, and this is their idea of a prank. And they show him this. They're doing this weird African drumming on his fucking window. He knocks the thing into his bed, starts on fire, and we've got the origin for our villain. Does this? I'm just gonna leave it up to you guys. Does this prank that they do, does it leave you with any glaring questions that you're like, Because I'm sitting here asking myself, where the fuck did they get this head? Did they kill somebody? Like, how did they come across this decomposing head with worms in? Is it real? What'd you guys think about the opening in general?
To me, it was a little goofy. I won't lie. Like
Yeah.
his whole reaction to him waking up and swatting it off the. I'm like, why are you like? There's just so many
Right.
questions I was asking.
Why would he
about.
touch it? Why would he ever
Yeah.
touch it? Like, get the fuck away from it.
Why are you set by all these rags and stuff? Like, I don't know. It was a weird stretch, but I mean, if you're asking if it was, I was confused as to who. I kind of knew that was like the setup right there. I was like, this guy's gonna get his revenge, huh?
Right.
And I wasn't confused about that from that.
No,
no. Like, the burning, he gets burned.
Got it.
Right. And that's one thing that they don't play around with is in this movie. There's no question about who the killer is.
Right.
You know, they don't try. A lot of times they'd maybe set something up and add more like variables to it or do something to make you forget about the beginning of the movie in some way. But they don't do that with this at all.
I think they tried that here. It just failed miserably. I think they tried to set up the weird kid as maybe something with it, like to deal with it. Like it's like, where are you following me and why are you over here?
Right.
You're a weirdo and doing all this shit. Maybe he was helping the killer. I don't know, but it quickly fizzled. Like I quickly got it that he wasn't a part of it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, because they go straight from there. The very next scene, it's 5 years later, and we get this orderly. This to me is like one of the funniest, like campiest moments of the movie. This is the biggest.
Yeah.
It's so good, it's bad moment of the movie because for me, there's not a lot of those. Like I enjoy a lot of the aspects of this movie. The parts that are bad, I don't like. It's not like so good, but this where he's so over the top. You want to be a doctor? You gotta see these burns. This is where it's at. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You go to medical school. You don't look at freaks as he's calling them. Like, that's not the way. But you guys get a kick out of him or what?
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
No, that was a funny scene because they both like bitched up when he.
What did he say too? He was like straight cheeseburger, man, or something like that.
So and he says it. It'd be one thing if it was like one or two, like you gotta see this, but it's like 5 or 6 or 7 times. Like, no, for real, you gotta see this burn. He's such a freak. So yeah, that just cracked me up, dude. That was just worth mentioning. Well, here's the thing though. So to me, they lay it on pretty thick. Like, this is your killer. They give a direct line from the origin to the killer, to his recovery, and then sending him out into the world. And then the next thing we get, this is a part of the movie that it's like, okay, clearly they wanted to kill. I'll just play it while I'm talking. He just follows this prostitute. He gets a prostitute, goes home with her. And then this is an example of just a really mean-spirited, like nasty kill that you get. It really reminds me of a lot of what you see in Tom Savini's work in The Prowler. Just like mean-spirited, kind of an ugly kill. But again, you guys agree, like for no real reason other than just to get a kill in, or maybe to show you, like, okay, this is the killer, or this is what this guy's capable of.
He just got out the asylum, so first thing he's looking for is a little bit of tail, and then he wants some revenge. So he's taking 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right.
Let me get some. Well, he never got any, but he killed him.
Yeah.
Right.
I noticed that there really after this kill, the first kill, there's really not a kill for like another 45 minutes. And I almost feel like they peeped that when editing this and like, yo, we gotta put something in here. This is a horror film, and if we have no kills in the first hour of this shit, yeah, I think it could have been that too. What Fable said, like he's just kind of he's out the pen. He's
Right.
frustrated. He's gonna let it out in some sort of way. But in all honesty, I think it was definitely an editing thing where they're like, "Yo, we don't have a kill in like the first hour of this movie. We got to do something, keep people engaged, let them know where we're going, so
To
that we."
me, this is. I'm glad you brought it up because that's exactly where I'm going next, dude. The film, your enjoyment of the film is going to hinge largely, I mean, I would guess, on this chunk of the movie. After it leaves there and we go to the summer camp, it becomes a hangout film
Yep.
where we're meeting these campers. We're hanging out with the dude from Short Circuit and Costanza and all these people. And if you enjoy this bit of the film, where there's a couple like fake out kills, you get the bit with Alfred spying on this girl in the shower. You think she's gonna get killed. That's a fake out. You get the bit with Fisher Stevens after you see his asshole, which is fucking weird and hairy.
Yo,
You
there's
get
a few asshole shots in this movie, bro.
yeah,
It kind of threw me off. Male assholes at that,
yeah,
So
yeah. Unneeded, I would say. You get some nice the other end of the spectrum. That's kind of sad, actually. What the guys get in this movie versus what the girls get, I kind of feel sorry for them because they got a bunch of Harry Costanza Short Circuit ass, where we get some pretty good goods on the other end of it. But okay, I guess I'll just ask you this. I will uh, go up front with this by saying this is probably like Shivers all over again. Where when I first saw this movie, I was like, damn, why this fucking long chunk in the middle where there's no kills? Like, dude, if there was one more kill in this movie, and I still believe this, if there was one or two more kills in this movie, it would shoot up the list for me as far as my 80s slashers in a big way for me personally. But after I watched it again, I've watched it maybe 3 or 4 times now. And I really don't think this is necessarily just a case of me like watching it so much that I've liked the characters. I think they're good characters. I think they set, I don't know if they're good characters, but every character is different, has its own thing. The performances are good, and the vibe that the cast creates, along with the extras. There's a billion extras on this set because evidently I think it was filmed at an actual summer camp that was running at the time. And to me, that adds a lot to the vibe. There's just kids everywhere. It's unlike any other camp movie that I can think of in that regard. Plus, there's kids at the camp, which adds to it. But for me, I've grown to like this chunk of the movie, and there's some nuance to it that I've grown to appreciate. And after I ask you guys this, we'll get into the Harvey Weinstein connection. That really adds some interest to me. But I would totally understand it if both of you were bored to bits by this chunk of the movie. Did you guys get any enjoyment out of this, or did you gotta tune this chunk out, or feel the need to tune it out, I should say?
Yeah, for me, definitely this is where it started lagging for me. Steph mentioned it earlier. Get a quick kill in the beginning. You don't get another kill until halfway through the movie. I'm looking for that. In this kind of movie, I understand that we're trying to endear you to these characters, so when they go through what they go through, it's more impactful. But ultimately, like you said, it becomes like a hangout movie. And although I do enjoy George Costanza and all their hijinks with each other, I'm still looking for that killer, right? Like, so,
Right.
yeah, this is definitely where this movie falls apart for me. Absolutely.
Same for you, Steph?
Um, more or less, I will say that once I found out how connected or deeply involved the Weinsteins were with this, I was really looking at the subtext in between how relationships between the men and women were.
Yep.
In particular, the editor who played the asshole, probably a standout character for me, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I view the way he treated his girlfriend. It reminded me a lot of what Harvey was accused of. Of him forcing himself and being super aggressive, and so I will say that was an interesting aspect for me.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't known about the Harvey stuff, I probably would have been a little more checked out as to, like, where
Right.
you got these kids for most of the movie, like, who's the killer. I could see that. There is a whole party vibe to it that I appreciate. That, like you said, that they were shooting at an actual camp, so the extras were like people at the camp. I think it
Mm-hmm.
adds to that. It gives it that feel. But I can't say I was too invested in any of their outcomes, you know, of
Right.
like, you know, how the relationships are gonna play out between each other, and who's gonna die, who's gonna last. I
Right.
didn't really care about any of that, but it wasn't terrible, but that's where the ball dropped. I will say that.
Right. I agree, man. It's one of those things. It's just a shame they didn't have the wherewithal to know that they needed to throw another kill in there. It would have
Right.
helped
Yeah.
so much. But I'm glad you brought up what you brought up. I've actually got a little video for all this. So we could kind of highlight some of these that you're talking about. It's a little dark. This is Eddie and Sally. This guy at the beginning of the movie, you kind of think Eddie's just going to be like a kind of annoying, horny teen. He becomes the most unlikable character in the movie. And then the way that Glazer is, this is the blonde guy here. He is the most stereotypical, like douchebag bully of the film, but he goes about it like he's not aggressive with the girl. He
Right.
becomes he pressures her and stuff.
Right.
But these two right here, the two counselors, they are your example of like, this is how it's done. This is an adult relationship where they both respect each other. So looking at those three dynamics, and then we've got Alfred, who somehow he's like the lead of the movie. He becomes the final boy. He's barely got any lines. He's got no this to me, this is my biggest like issue with the film. But this is why it's interesting to me now.
Yeah.
You have creepy kid. He's the lead of the film. And what he's doing, he's creeping on girls in the shower. He's spying on people here. He's spying them on over there. And then I realized at one point, I'm like, oh, or this is me just tying things together that might not exist. But I believe it. Harvey Weinstein wrote this story. And I think without him knowing, he let aspects of his personality seep into these characters. Yeah. I think he's every one of these people. Or you can at least, if you want this movie to be more interesting, imagine Harvey as all of these people. He's Glazer, who's impotent. He's trying to get with girls and it's just not working. And when he does get with it, he busts his nut real quick.
Can't perform, bro.
Not many people know Harvey Weinstein's got some kind of fucking disease that this is explicit. People that don't want to hear this, close your ears. He's got something wrong with his penis and his junk. There's like there's like something wrong. He's got like a deformed junk. All right. I heard that on a podcast. It's a very famous podcast. I'm believing it. I didn't look into it.
I believe it. I believe it though.
And then you've got Eddie, who's the one that's aggressive. And this is what you hear a lot about Harvey Weinstein. He's just like a bully. He's like an aggressive bully. And then the other thing we know about him, he's a fucking creep. So then you've got Alfred, young Jewish creepy kid, who is pretty much what Harvey Weinstein was. He was a man at this time, but I don't know if I'm just fucking reaching, but what do you guys think of all this? Is it at least add a little layer of intrigue to you?
Yeah, I could definitely see it being facets of Harvey's personality. You know, just I could see that. Like maybe the counselors are his idea of how a functional relationship should work.
Right.
But the other characters were his approaches to relationship or how he operates.
Right. And it kind of explains why Alfred survives the flick. It's like he's got no redeeming qualities, but it's like to Harvey, that's him, or maybe, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, let's not kill him. Just hang on to him. And when you watching the special features, he's mentioned constantly. His fingers were all over this. He was on set most days. Like he wasn't just a producer that stood off. Like this is in a lot of ways, this is his movie and Tom Savini's movie. Like they were the most important creative people on set.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm extremely shocked that for how this was like considered indie, wasn't it? Was this studio? This wasn't studio, was it?
Well, it was the first Miramax film, so it was the first film of what would become a major studio.
Right.
See,
so pretty much indie.
Okay, I guess that kind of ties in. For Miramax being so known for like their indie hits, I find it so, I don't want to say odd, but interesting that their first film out the gate was a horror film, and they never kind of really messed with horror after that. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't catch any of the Harvey Weinstein there was only one scene, I guess, where the chick is taking a shower and it's like right at her chest line, and then like, no, we're gonna show you her tits, and the camera backs up even more. I was like, that was Harvey Weinstein, right there. But I was just thinking about like how many of these girls probably had to take off their shirt to get it, like, you know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
I wonder that stuff all the time. When I
Girl
see
ratio.
Weinstein films. Good, sorry.
No, yeah. I was looking at the guy to girl ratio, and I was just like thinking of like Weinstein. He definitely like
Right.
5 girls, 2 guys.
Yeah.
The ratio
Yeah.
was unbalanced.
Right. No, I mean it's like I said, it doesn't make it a better film, but to me, it makes it a better watch because there's there's not a scene that goes by in this movie that I can't take something away from. I can at least like that opening kill. First of all, at least it's a kill. And at least like when I watch it, I can at least like pick it apart. Like, why the fuck is this here? Like to me, like it's a movie like this. Like every bit of it is fun to at least think about while you're watching. And I feel like I'm dogging a little bit more than I mean to. It's a flawed film, but it is one that I enjoy for the most part. Let's you guys want to watch the raft scene? Pick this shit apart a little bit. I've got the sound for this one. I don't know how this YouTube thing works. I'm not monetized, so I don't think it fucking matters anyway. But I'm gonna play this thing with the sound. Let's just watch it, and then we'll talk about this. One of the most famous scenes in horror history, honestly. It's one of the most notorious. This scene right here is what made this film become a video nasty. It was banned in Europe specifically for this film, and I think it's one of the goriest films in American 80s horror cinema. And I think it's also one of the film or one of the scenes that probably led to the nuts being snipped off the American filmmakers too. That's why there was the
Mm.
crackdown in the 80s. So let's check out the raft scene.
All right.
Dun dun dun. Okay, so my reaction, and I'll just go first since I had seen it a bunch of times. I've seen it fucking so many times at this point. I get why it's so famous. I think it's super gory. I think they squeezed 3 or 4 of those kills that they could have spread out throughout the rest of this
Right.
film. That's probably the biggest reason why we don't have a kill earlier is because of this scene right here. To me, there's like the way that it starts out, like I kind of hate the way it's edited. Like it bugs me so much. It's like, bam, he comes down, he stabs into the ground, and then he stabs into this piece of wood, and then like this girl falls off. It's like, at what point in the first 15 seconds is he gonna stab somebody? Like it bugs me the way it's edited, even though I get why it's so cool. There's still issues with it. So I got more, but what do you guys think of this scene?
I agree with you. The editing is a little choppy or
Right.
amateurish. It could be a little smoother with the transitions, camera transitions, but I will say that it's probably the highlight of the movie for me, just with the effects. Like it's the
Right, right.
subtleties of the my favorite bit, and it was so small, but it just because it was the details was the chick when she's got the gash in her forehead. Like I thought that was the coolest bit. It even though they should have spread it out, I will say that at certain points in that scene, it's like it escalates, the momentum picks up. Like he slashes the one dude, he's stabbing stuff, but then it's like chops off old dude's fingers,
Right.
and then the old dude he pierces in the neck, and then it's just like that gash for me was just a nice icing on the cake. Um, it's a peculiar scene just because they should have because of the lack of kills throughout the rest of the film, this should have been spaced out. But had they done that, would this scene in particular, still stand out?
Right.
Because of the momentum of it, because of how many characters were involved.
Would we be talking about the movie? You know what I mean?
Right,
Because this
right,
is the reason why this movie is so famous. I think.
yeah, yeah. And I didn't know any information on this movie prior to talking about it or you picking it for this week. And I didn't know the raft scene was like a legendary highlight scene, but that watching that is a scene that definitely stood out to me. Like we were talking before we started recording,
Mhm.
and I kind of told you I was like, yeah, the raft scene, and it really did. It stood out to me. It was it showed the potential of what that movie could have been. Like
Right,
if they
right.
could have had a little bit more of that, like two more scenes of something like that throughout the movie, I think it would have helped it a long way.
Hell
But
yeah.
it showed a lot of potential there.
Hell yeah. What about you, Fable?
Well, I'm sort of desensitized to a lot of this stuff, so watching it isn't really thrilling for me. But if I
Hmm.
had to put myself back in those times, especially just watching the scene right now, I could understand how the brutality of the scene could affect some people back then, watching it back then, because for the most part, this movie is milk toast, and then all of a sudden we get into this super brutal scene,
Yeah,
and
no
so I,
one.
I get how it can stand the test of time and be memorable for some people, but for me, it's just it doesn't age well. It's kind of
Right.
like that editing stuff like that. So it was just okay. It was the highlight of the film because that's when shit got real, and that's what I was looking for shit to get real. That's
Right.
when it
Right.
finally got real. But it also highlights my biggest problem with this movie,
Hmm.
is that the main bad guy is not visible.
Yep.
He is a shadow with scissors, and
Yep.
that for me is just not enough to endear me to him. And this is probably why Baghead Jason did so much better, and you know what I mean, and
With the
White
fans,
Mike Myers.
especially.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I mean? This shadow with shears, it's just not cutting it. It's not enough. And then when they finally do reveal the guy's face, it's like, okay, whatever.
Right. But I think
That was shears. I like that. Not cutting it. That was a good little.
I think the just to touch on what you're saying about Cropsy and exactly, dude, if they had planned out the reveal of his look for this scene, maybe like I get
Mm,
holding back, like
yep.
the shark in Jaws, hold it back. Don't give us the monster too quick. But this might have been the scene. Let's see him. Let's get a look at this guy. Maybe
He's
it's
going. Yeah.
in the daylight. It wouldn't have looked as good. And I agree. Like I think the design for Cropsy is cool for the time and it's unique. There's not a lot that looks like it, but it leaves something to be desired as well. But
Yeah.
that's definitely something I was going to ask you guys about, and I'm glad you brought it
Yeah,
up.
because you'll see how when is a Nightmare on Elm Street drop.
Years after this.
Yeah, that's a burn victim right there. Freddy Krueger
Right.
is
Yeah.
burned,
Mhm.
and he looks fucking awesome. Like,
Yeah, this guy's pretty much like a combination Jason Freddy, more or less. A little heavy on the Jason side, but still plenty of Freddy to go along with it. But no, dude, that's I just imagine, or I'm curious what this film could have been and what the legacy for Cropsy for this villain could have been if they showed him more in this movie. If they showed him more in this movie, you would have this might
Yeah.
be a fucking Cropsy figure right here, and you'd almost definitely have some sequels to The Burning. You
It's
don't have a horror icon.
Yeah,
right.
right. Now you need a visual, like an entity to a mascot almost. Like I think that's kind of why that Trick or Treat. It's a well enough made movie, but I think that's kind of like partly the success of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is I always forget the damn character's name, Smiley or
I
the
have no
Jack O' Lantern.
idea. I know
Mhm.
exactly what you're talking about, but yeah, 100%. You have that thing. You need an image. You
Yes.
need, you need those moments, but then you need those iconic visual moments in a film that make you like, oh, when you think about a film, you got
Yeah.
these memories that pop through your head. But you also need that icon that can leave the fucking film
Yes,
and show up in Walmart. Like that, you're
yes.
gonna see a toy of. I don't know about Walmart. That might be Spencer's.
No, I
Let's
get
say
you. Yeah,
Hot
yeah.
Topic, if
Yeah.
those still exist.
And the thing that they could have done, I mean, like instead of shears, I mean, this guy should have been had a flamethrower through the entire
Mm,
movie. He should have been
right.
motherfuckers up. That like you said,
Molotovs and
iconic things. We would have been buying that flamethrower. Like, yo,
Right.
got the
yeah.
Cropsy flamethrower. It just came out. NECA just had a flamethrower. I'm
It
buying.
comes with real flames. Hell yeah, dude. Well, but I did just want to, before we move on to the end of the film, which is probably probably my biggest issue with the film, honestly, is the ending. Not the very ending where you see Cropsy, but the build up to that. I took the time to make this video right here, so I'm going to go ahead and just play this one as well. This one. This is my favorite kill of the movie. This is a stylized badass kill. I don't know if you guys could actually hear me during that or
Yeah.
not. I didn't think there was fucking sound. I like to me that's the kill of the movie. Like there's no kills that I can think about that look like that. Especially like if you're going back and comparing this movie to slashes of the era, the kills in this are so much more extreme than what came before it. And this is one that, like, it reminds me of something you'd see in an Italian film, just something that where they really shot it in a cool, interesting, like stylized way. Like they put the camera on the killer's head and slammed him up against the wall. This is the one that I'm surprised isn't like a more famous kill. Like if this was a Jason kill, this would be a really famous Jason kill, I think.
Well, once again, it's the shadow with shears. You know, we don't see it. We see just shears kill the dude instead of like this entity or this image. It's brutal, but you know, it's more or less. It's cool how they do it, but I would, in defense of the canoe scene, I would say that's more memorable because we kind of see some stuff. Like we just see this guy get stabbed, and the imagery is cool. Don't get me wrong. Like I like the little detail when he pulls the knife out and he does like the whole anime, you know, like he like the ricochet.
Yeah, Glazer's, and he's doing a good job selling it.
yeah, exactly. But you know, that's about it. It's just him getting stabbed in a cool way as opposed to limbs getting lopped off. Just there's something about the dude laying on the deck where he gets pierced and you see him pull it out. Is just it doesn't sit well, you know, as opposed to it's almost, even though it looks cool, I think the side angle of it takes away from the brutality of what could have been if they would have shown it from the front.
For me, it's like its strength is its weakness. They linger on it. The thing that they do in this movie that they don't do in a lot of American slashers is linger on the kill, linger on the blood and the gore. But this, it's like, it's almost lingers too long. You don't want to be staring at it for too long. There's too many cuts and seeing the same thing. I agree, that side angle, or even just a quicker look at the side angle, or even him coming down the tree didn't have to go on as long. It's a weird one. What I like about it is what I don't like about it.
It's funny you mentioned the lingering, because even though I love the canoe scene, the lingering thing happened towards the end where a girl gets the gash in her forehead and the blood's trickling down her arm and into the water and it's fading to red, and that's what was one scene where I was like, all right, I get it, guys. You're trying too hard. You're trying too hard right now. Like I get the effect. You know, you don't gotta linger on it so long. But I did notice a lot of lingering.
Did it almost look like CG, like some fucking ancient CG blood going down her arm? Like, to me, it's weird looking.
Like strawberry jam.
It's not real. I think just back to the rap for 1 second. We've talked about the editing, but like that bit that really gets everybody, the slicing the fingers off. It's like, oh fuck, I could imagine like that would suck. Make that happen within the first like 2 seconds of the scene, and to me, I look at it totally differently. It's just that lack of buildup and all like the misses or quickness. Like put something a little bit more gory, more visceral that you can, you know, sink your teeth into before that. And then the other bit with the neck, that's a Tom Savini not trope, but it's something you see a lot. You see him, he does it in Friday the 13th with Kevin Bacon. I think in some ways better than this because it's going through the back. To me, there's one view of this, the initial like stabbing that looks badass, and then they flash back to him and he's got this like go gadget neck, like where his neck looks a mile long, and it's like we didn't need that extra shot. Just stay on that one angle. Again, that's another one that just takes me out of it. And the way they shot that obviously is they've got the bottom of the boat, they've got a wall set up like the bottom of a canoe, and he's got his head sticking through there. But I guess the guy was kind of freaking out because he's in there for like 45 minutes and they're swinging these shears around his face the whole time and he can't do anything about it other than just be like, fuck, get these things away from my face. But I don't know.
Well, no, it's iconic as that scene is. It's very, I guess because of what they did during its time, you know, for 1981, that was, like you said, they weren't really pushing the boundaries like that in terms of kills and horrors. But it was cool. I can see why it's lasted, but it's just a choppy scene. Could definitely be edited a lot better.
Right, for sure, man. Okay, let's get into the end of this film, my friends. This is like, I remember the first time I watched it. You've got this whole bit. It's chaos at this point. They've discovered the raft. Another cool bit where Fisher Stevens' body comes floating up, and that looks really cool. I think his makeup is pretty badass. But everybody knows about what's going on. It's chaos at the camp. And Alfred you see this guy, this young, creepy guy, he's like 20 minutes of him. It's probably less than that. It feels like 20 minutes. First, you just all these scenes of him rounding a corner. And then the next thing, he's rounding another corner. and then he
Never
gets
say anything either.
and then it goes to Todd, who's the oldest counselor, who's pretty much been like defending him the whole time. And that's why I say there's like that is also in the whole gender politics aspect of the story, or what's potentially there, is that the older male is constantly defending this guy for being creepy, and the older female is constantly having to stand up for the girls. So, but at the end of the movie, all the girls die. The female counselor dies. Creepy kid and his protector counselor, they both get to live. Anyway, so right after all these scenes of Alfred rounding corners, we get 5 minutes. Now Todd is trying to find Alfred. Now he's rounding corners. So it's another 5 minutes of that. And then he's in some kind of mine, like barn or whatever, which makes you think of Friday the 13th part 3, where that ended in a barn. And we get the final showdown finally. And when it gets there, I think it's pretty decent. We see the makeup. It is what it is. It looks pretty good for the time, but it could look a hell of a lot better. And then one of the coolest moments in the film, where it's actually Tom Savini behind the camera, with the axe, swinging it into Cropsy's head, blood squirts out. I think that looks pretty damn dope. But do you guys agree with me? Like, the build up to this, it didn't pay off when we get to the end, which is pretty decent. Took way too fucking long to get there.
You know what? I was gonna say I didn't really care for the end, but I didn't think about the build up to it. But it might be the build up's fault. Like the ending was it was a little lackluster. That the build up to it, you know, it was just very underwhelming.
Let me put it like this while I'm thinking of it. There's a moment in the scene, I think, when you get the first Cropsy reveal where you actually see the mask. Todd had been like sneaking around forever. Then all of a sudden there's a musical sting and Cropsy jumps out and you see him for the first time. I think every time that I've watched this movie, I've had to be like, what? Just because like I'm zoned out at that point every time, that the jump scare never gets me. So it's like that's my issue with it. Did you?
No, the pacing, man. It was a lot of like him, right? You know, in particular, the camp counselor dude, he's just kind of walking around with a fucking axe for like the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And get to the little place.
Looking like he wants to go audition for fucking Ash in the Evil Dead.
Yeah. I was like, bro, you got the shirt down all the way like Ash and shit. Yeah. I definitely was getting vibes with that. Oh, but it's funny. But I'm thinking of the ending now, and this is me deep reaching. But what if the weird kid was the camp counselor's little brother? He just didn't want people to know that. And that would actually make Harvey and Bob, his brother, tie into this story. Because who lived? Camp counselor and the weird kid.
Right.
Now, what if the weird kid was Harvey? And we don't ever hear too much negative about the other Weinstein brother. That's why I'm thinking the camp counselor was like him looking at his brother, like the functional one who can have a functional relationship,
making excuses for his pervy brother, but not being a perv himself.
Making excuses for the weirdo. And who survived those two? And who killed the monster? Harvey, who is the mastermind behind this whole
It's crazy movie. Remind me, right after this, I'm going to change the thumbnail. Harvey Weinstein, the burning, the Harvey Weinstein story. We're gonna get some fucking clicks, guys.
Just put him in the corner or something in the background, Harvey Weinstein and shit. But
what about you, Phable? What did you think of the ending of this film? Is it pretty lackluster? I'm assuming I'm not getting the vibe that you enjoyed the beginning, the middle, or the end of this movie.
Very observant, my friend. Well, I mean, the way the middle was so boring for me, the ending didn't help either. First, it was too dark. It was way too dark. Like we're running through those hallways and stuff like that. I mean, I was watching it on Tubi. Maybe they had a older cut or a 1080p cut, but what I was watching was way too dark. I didn't see a lot of the action going on, so that detracted me. Two, what you said about them, just putting in a lot of filler shots, walking around. I noticed that as well. The fact that Cropsy, elements that would make Cropsy more memorable are just like shown at the end. So like what I'm saying is like this place that they end up at, that could have been Cropsy's home base for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? Could have incorporated. This is where Cropsy's at. Like you found Cropsy's home base. And the flamethrower, you know what I mean? It's so poetic that he's, a burn victim and then he's burning his victims and stuff like that.
Right.
You could have even added a supernatural element where fire doesn't affect Cropsy. Like,
right.
He could try to burn him. It ain't gonna work on him.
If this had been done in 83 or maybe even 82, they probably would have went that route. They sure as shit would have shown him. Like
Yeah,
they just didn't know that that's what you do. I
yeah,
wonder if they even think, well, Spielberg didn't show the shark. Let's not show this guy. No, yeah, I think it's one of the biggest misses in
yeah.
the film is like fleshing out Cropsy and making him a little bit cooler. Like I think it's a cool image. Like I
Right.
think the picture that we're seeing behind us, that's a badass image. Like I get that, but yeah, it's not enough to carry him and make him the icon that the other 80 slashers
Yeah.
became.
And then final thing I would say is that the same way they didn't build Cropsy enough for me, and I just needed to see more of Cropsy, it's the same way I needed to see more of the final guy. Like you said earlier, he didn't have enough lines. He wasn't doing much, so that when he ends up being the final guy, to try to kill Cropsy, I'm thinking they're setting up Jason Alexander. He's the most charismatic character in the movie. He's the one that protects everybody. I don't know if you noticed. He's like, "Hey, lay off of that guy." Or,
Right.
"Don't talk about him," and he protects everybody. So I thought he was for sure going to be the final guy or something. But he kind of like, didn't he like disappear? Did he get killed?
No, he doesn't get killed. It's like
Disappeared,
Harvey
right?
Weinstein's like, well, we don't want people like that around. We don't want people that are protecting weak people.
Get
Let's just
away.
show what we do with those types. We just make them disappear. Well, yeah, no, it's it's so wild looking at it through that perspective. But let's just let's wrap this thing up, man. Well, Fable, you're rolling right now. I'm getting the feel for your opinions on the film. Why don't you just lay it out for me? What's your overall thoughts on The Burning? Anything else you want to add to what you've pretty much laid out for us already?
Um,
And go ahead and give your letter grade also. Anybody down in the chat, if you've seen The Burning, let's see your letter grades below.
this movie is not badly made in any way. Like, right? Like I've seen we've seen some bad movies doing what we do, right? So
Right.
like this is I can't really ding it for any kind of like bad stuff, especially for budget, time frame, the things they were doing. But ultimately, um yeah, I mean, Friday the 13th is the superior film, and like Steph said, I do feel like this is a rip on that, whether it was or it wasn't. I do feel like it's a cash in. It feels like a cash in. The story's so thin, razor thin. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Focusing on the kids and the teenagers and having them curse, and these are things that are, you know what I mean, they're cursing, they're smoking, they're having sex in the forest and things like that, and things that you're not supposed to expect like kids to do, right? Like, so this is like opening that curtain to that,
They
what
just
kids do when their parents aren't around, kind of
Mm.
thing. And that's the intrigue in this kind of stuff, but it's just been done better. And had I probably seen this when it came out or around the time it came out, I probably would have had some fond memories for it.
Right.
But
I,
being that I've seen superior films in the same class, even Sleepaway Camp, like I think is a better slasher than this one. So yeah, if I had to grade it, uh, one last thing, I would say if you're gonna watch this, watch it because of its historical significance.
right.
Weinstein, Miramax, Tom Savini, and things like that. Short Circuit guy, Fisher Stevens, and you know what I mean. These are the
Right.
reasons to watch this movie. Outside of that, C minus.
Nice. Well, semi nice. I would say if you're a slasher guy, you've probably already seen it. But if it depends on your appetite for slashers. Like I'm the type I'll get into a kick every now and then where that's just fucking what I'm watching. I'll just like because they're so easy to watch. You don't even have to like
yeah.
pay attention to them too much. I kind of like when movies don't have too much of a story. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt this one, but I they could have just set up a better story in that first 5-10 minutes, and then you don't have to revisit it, but
Yeah.
set something more
Well,
interesting and more
I mean,
intriguing up
even
there.
even the one where they try to make it interesting, it was like, oh yeah, the final guy, he was at that first. He was one
He
that
was
pulled
just
the
at it.
prank on
Yeah,
Yeah.
Propsy,
Yeah.
and it's like,
The
oh
big
well,
reveal.
we knew that. Like,
yeah. No one fucking yeah. That wasn't. First of all, it wasn't shocking, and they didn't add anything to his character to make that matter. Like I don't know. Yeah, there just wasn't anything there when it came to that. But
yeah.
what about you, Steph? What's your overall thoughts?
Um, I do. This was not a bad film. I've definitely seen worse. I do think if I would have seen this a little earlier on, maybe even before Friday the 13th Part Two, that I probably have a little bit more of I'd be a little bit more warmed up to it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I agree with Fable. The story is razor thin. It's done better in Friday the 13th Part Two. And I get what you mean, Verno. Like I do enjoy movies where it's like you can still follow it, but not have to be in tune to it the entire time. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just pop up and you still can kind of
Right.
grasp the whole concept of the movie.
Especially a movie like this. I don't want like a blockbuster to be like there. You know what I mean? There's certain movies that lend themselves to that kind of movie. Yeah.
But with that being said, like it's like when there's this type of movie when the kills are so far and few, and there's only a couple iconic scenes, it doesn't help to kind of like it doesn't help to kind of like not be engaged to this movie the entire time, because if you might miss them,
Right.
But I've definitely seen it's not a bad film. It's well enough made film. It's like Fable said, for the historical facts behind it, like Miramax's first film, Weinstein's close association attached to it. And I find intriguing because they never really dealt with the first. It's so weird how so many big stars get their start with horror and never go back to it.
Oh yeah.
Or even producers like that blew my mind that the Weinstein Bros first movie was a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So for the historical significance, I definitely think you did get something out of this. But as a film, I've seen it done better. Fable could have read my mind. I was going with the C- as well. It's an average film, but even with it being average, I've seen other average films of its caliber. Like I think Friday the 13th Part Two is an average film, to be honest. It's not one of my highlights.
It's one of it. See, that's the thing for me. That's my favorite in the whole franchise. Friday 2. I think that's why this reminds me so much of it, with the vibe that there's likable characters. I really got to do a video comparing the two, because this has likable characters, but then it's also has the stereotypical bully and glazer and the creepy elements. There's got a lot of that, but it's also got that vibe that most camp slashers don't have. I think that's what I enjoy. That's what I enjoy about Friday the 13th Part 2 so much, is the cast and the vibe from them and the fun that they're having. It's very similar on this film.
I think that I'm trying to articulate this the right way. You want shock value, right? So I think that what these kids do when the parents are away is the shock value of this film, but it's just so dated that it's not shocking to us anymore. So we don't get the feeling so that hour that they're doing what they're doing, we're supposed to be like, yo, these kids are crazy, man.
Oh my God, they use lubricated condoms.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, we don't have that now. So like I look at a movie like Pearl, that had a group of people, and it lulled with them for a little while, showed their relationships, but it threw the whole like we're porn stars thing, and it kind of gave it a twist. So that's the kind of thing you kind of got to do now to have that jaw drop shock. You know what I mean?
Right. No, yeah. Well, I think you mean X. And then in X, they go an hour without a kill, but it's so their hangout is so engaging. It is so well written and so like interesting. With this, it's just a fucking hangout that you're observing. There's stuff going on. I didn't think of it the way that you're pointing it out, Fable, where it's like, oh, this is people watching what kids do. And for the kids at the time, like, this is how we really act. Like, wow, we're being represented.
All the pervy guys in this movie, because almost all of them are pervy, and almost every guy in almost all the 70s, early 80s movies kind of forced themselves on women in a lot of films that we see. And and not for nothing, I kind of grew up thinking that's how it works. You know what I mean? Like, the woman's gonna fight you a little bit, but you got to be persistent and you're gonna get it. You know what I mean? And I wonder if adults at that time looked at this and said, oh no, this is disgusting. Like, we got to get this off of the screens. Our kids are watching. You know what I mean? I wonder if there was that element back in those days, because for me, it was like, oh, this is how life works.
Right.
This is how you get girls.
Sadly, I think the majority, maybe the more people ahead of their time were thinking that, but I think the majority of the people probably didn't bat an eye at it. But then again, like, look at the way that the way it's treated in this movie. I don't think it's supposed to be something you're supposed to I think you're supposed to look at them as the bad guys in the movie. You know what I mean? It's not like glorifying that the dude's out being really pushy with the girl.
Yeah, like it's a accepted social norm almost, because even though the guys push on these women, they still have fun together and play around and still
Right.
get back to normal activities. And then when they're alone, that's when they get all pervy and pushy and stuff like that. But it kind of gets it kind of goes back to normal again. So it's like, was this a normalized behavior like back then? Like, I don't know.
Right, right.
Yo, this is random, but you guys, something when you guys said made me think of it real quick. But I did enjoy the beginning of the film where they're like in the city. You had a lot of like shots of like just reminding me of like 70s films.
When they're in the city, I'm sitting there trying. Oh, duh! At the beginning of the
He
film,
killed the
yeah,
hooker, and yeah,
it's
yeah,
following his feet, which you also get a lot in Friday too. It's a
yeah,
lot of foot fetish slasher shots. Yeah,
yeah.
but okay, just to wrap up my review, man, I've been fucking all over the place on this movie. I'm gonna give it a B minus. The last time I watched it, I feel like I'm a broken record with this. I keep saying last time I watched it was the most I've ever enjoyed this movie, and a good deal of that was from the Weinstein stuff, and just like it made those bits of the movie more interesting to me. Was at least it gave me something to engage with the scenes and to think about. And then just like I said, like the way that those quote unquote boring bits of the movie, the way that they're done are done well. Like I do feel like these are real kids at a real camp. The vibe is real. It's done well. It's just it's done a little too long. That kills the movie. And then Steph, I know you're a stickler for an ending, and that is the biggest ding on the movie for me.
Yeah.
The chunk of the movie without a kill, and then that 10, it's probably only 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the max leading up to the finale. That if they had just like been thoughtful enough to cut that down to what it was supposed to be, or what it should have been, in my opinion, it would have made for a so much more enjoyable film. But the way I bought this movie, if I'm being 100, halfway, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna review this. I want to buy that. And it was one that it's like you said, Fable, the historical significance is like, oh, I want that movie. And then when I bought it, I'm like, should I have fucking bought this? Do I need this one? Now, after watching it a few times and looking more into it, like I'm very thrilled that I have the movie. I'm happy to add it to my collection. I'll 1,000% watch it again in the future. And it's an interesting little piece out of an interesting, one of the coolest and most important eras in film history, but especially horror history, is from this era right here. So it's a little I don't know about hidden gems, not the right word, but it's a lesser known non-mainstream film that to me it's pretty goddamn cool.
Let
so
me
we gotta
ask you a question real quick. Without the Weinstein subtext in the interlaced with the story, would it still hold up for you though? I know that makes it more intriguing for me, but take that away and it's just you don't have the take away the Weinstein connections,
right?
You know, it's such a
take that away, and I like you're 100%. That's why I'm saying it doesn't make it a better film. But even aside from that, if I'm judging it on its era, I think I really wonder what people think about this. You guys down in the chat, like, tell me your opinion on this, or in the rewind, put it down in the comments. Does this have the best kills in 80s slasher history? It's definitely got the best kills of any camp slasher that I could think of. Like, these are better kills in this than I think almost any of the Friday the 13th films, because the Friday the 13th films are known for their kills, but they're pretty whack with the majority of, they're all these quick boom and it's just done. It's over. You don't get many good kills from those movies, and they're all about the kills. And I love those movies. You get some great stuff in Freddy movies, but I don't know, as far as just a straight slasher.
Yeah. Okay. I was like cracking my head trying to think about it, but yeah, I think you just said it. I think Freddy definitely has the best kills in there.
Right.
Freddy, I was just gonna say Freddy.
He's in a different category, because he's like, it's like if Family Guy was gonna do a kill scene. They can do anything. It can go anywhere. So I respect that. You're right. There probably is movies with better kills in the Freddy franchise.
His kills were the main event. Like, that's what Freddy became after a while, was like, what imaginatory way is he going to end up killing these kids? Like, you know, whatever, Nintendo Power and all this other shit he comes up with. I think that's what makes those movies tick, man.
No, I agree.
I will
he's in a
say
different
for
category.
1981, this was more visceral than I was expecting. It was more, you know,
Right.
I was kind of thrown off by the level of blood and just the piercing and limbs being chopped off in such an early '80s film.
Well,
You
that's
know,
that you said it right there. Like if I'm trying to think again, listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, as far as American films, because in Italy
right.
there's some shit that is on par with this. But what do we have? We've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we've got Alice Sweet Alice, we've got Halloween, Tourist Trap, Terror Train, Prom Night. There's not much
I
other
mean,
than that.
you
This
got
beats the shit out
Day,
of all those.
you got Day, Day of the Dead, which
Dawn of the Dead, yeah,
Dawn of
with
the Dead,
Savini.
or Day of the Dead, yeah, where I remember as a child watching Day. I think it's Day of the Dead, where they pull the guy in half.
Right, that's 85. So that's
Yeah.
Savini after this. But yeah.
Okay, when they pull him in half, I was 5 years old, by the way. I remember seeing that and being dreaded every time I knew that scene was coming, like what was going to happen to that guy, because it looked so freaking realistic at that time. I mean, it looked like they were ripping this dude in half. Like that's how visceral and disgusting that scene was. They had some pretty good kills, man.
That's why the Hitcher stuck
Well,
with
yeah.
you, man.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because I don't tend to even think about when I'm thinking of kills, like my mind never goes to the zombie stuff. I'm just thinking slashers. But you're right. Yeah, there's kills in that. I think that's Savini's best work. He thinks that too. Day of the Dead is his masterpiece. I would say out of his slashers, this is his best slasher. It's his best kills in a movie in a slasher, I think, better than Friday the 13th and the Prowler. Maniac I've only seen once, and then there's another big one that he did. But I think this might be his best slasher
Dude,
kill.
what's the movie that you showed a clip of? I gotta watch this movie. Ever since I seen this clip, you showed it. It's one of the most gruesome kills I've seen from an early '80s movie. It's the one where they put in the guy's head through a saw.
Intruder. Steph watched that.
Dude, I gotta watch that freaking movie. That looked insane, even
Yeah.
for now. Like,
Right. I think it's a good example of a campy, cheesy, like kind of shitty 80s slasher film. That's kind of fun. You could turn your brain more off on that one than probably even this one. But it's all
There's
about the
some I
kills.
want to go back and rewatch. Now I've got, even though it's not saying much, I've got more of an appreciation for these, these older more niche horror films now than I did when I would review some of the earlier ones. Like I'm gonna have to go back and watch The Intruder again.
Yeah. That's one that was done. I
I'm
know
gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it soon. Yeah.
the Raimi brothers were involved in the production behind it. They're actually in the movie, but
The grocery
they're not the
store.
ones that did it. It's the guy, I can't think of his name. We talked about him recently. Scott Spezio. Is that his fucking name? He's a guy that makes a bunch of movies with Quentin Tarantino, one of the
Was that,
producers on his films.
Were they in the grocery store?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's like 19. No, I don't even know. But it's early. It's 83, 84, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But hell yeah, man. Again, just a quick shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Brother Joe stopping in. Appreciate you, Brother Joe.
Thanks.
Warren Smith was up in here. Bobby De La Ghetto up in this motherfucker. Eric, thank you, man. Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate you.
Oh yeah.
Pew, 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 pew. Two Gun, you are the best, man. Appreciate you
Best.
as always. Evan was up in here, and his older brother Dylan were up in here. I think I saw Rogue Collecting earlier.
Yeah,
Sal was up in here. I really appreciate it, man. This is awesome to get a nice turnout here on a
Those
Thursday.
are the homies, man. Those are the homies. Everybody just said those are the homies, man.
And Kenneth Bird, man. Kenneth Bird. Appreciate you as well, dude. So hell yeah, man. This was fun. I pretty much got out of this. I'm not gonna lie. If there was part of me that's like, maybe they'll love it after I watched it for the 5th time and kind of started to enjoy it a lot more. But this is honestly, this is what I wanted out of this review. I wanted to pick it apart to be able to talk about what people fucking love this movie, what they love about it. But it's a flawed film, and I think it's fun to kind of pick these flawed films apart a little bit. You guys were fun to do it with, so thanks, man.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say I could find myself watching this again. I can't say that with many films I go over, or the horror films I go over, but there is an intrigue to this film that I can't really put my finger on. Maybe it is the Weinstein stuff, but it's such a crucial part of, like you said, like that early era of films and horror films. I can see myself giving this another watch.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that it's not a badly made film, right? Like, just like I don't think it's terrible. I just think that there's some story problems, right? There's just like story problems, but and because it's made well, you can stomach another watch. You know what I mean? I understand.
Right.
You're like, okay, yeah, let's do it again.
Right. Hell yeah. We didn't even really mention the cinematography, but that's to me, that's part of that's well made. It's got solid cinematography. I'll be honest, when I first watch it, the first viewing of this, I'm like, oh my God, this is a cut above like everything in Friday the 13th. I've went through that franchise with a fucking fine tooth comb actually recently. And I think at least part 2, which is most comparable to this one, that's a better shot film than this. And for the most part, Dylan saying Burning is one of his favorite camp slashers. You can't deny that. I think it's one of the best camp slashers because I'd say it's on par with the majority of the Friday the 13th movies for me, even though I love that franchise. And it's comparing it to Sleepaway Camp. Like Fable, I know you were saying you think Sleepaway Camp's better. I think this is better, but Sleepaway Camp is better. If that makes any fucking sense. This is a more well-made film. Sleepaway Camp is
like
just
Burning, but you know that Sleepaway is probably the superior film.
well, no, I think The Burning's maybe the superior film, but Sleepaway Camp is more fun because it's the worst film in a fucking beautiful way. It's so fucking stupid, and it's one of my favorite camp slashers, and I do like it more than this, but I think this is more well-made.
That ending of Sleepaway Camp, though, that's that you want to talk about iconic horror.
Yeah, that's a great ending, and 100%, and that's why I think it's remembered so much more fondly, and that's my biggest problem with this flick, man. If they just fucking ended this a little tighter, I'd have given it a B plus. Like I really do enjoy the movie for what it is with all its flaws. I think it reminds me. We say this all the time. It kind of has that 70s vibe, that more chill vibe. You know, it's 81, so there's definitely
that's why I brought
from
up the early scenes, because I was like, I know you appreciate 70s films, and I definitely got that vibe at the more particular in the
my man Fisher Stevens was bringing the 80s though with them shirts, man. I was like, what is he doing with those shirts?
It is so crazy. Like this is only like 5 years before Short Circuit. And Fisher Stevens, he looks like 15 years younger. He looks like a little kid.
Yes.
Minus the hairy asshole.
I didn't realize it was him because I know they show. I know he was the one with the gun or the pistol, the cap gun at the beginning, but I didn't realize it was him until much later on when I think when he was getting killed. I was like, yo, that's Short Circuit dude,
right.
You know? And so that
this is also the first time that I watched the movie that right before the raft scene was about to happen, I actually like started looking around at the characters on the raft. I'm like, oh damn, dude, they're about to be out of the movie. Like I actually like had grown more attached to them. Even like the little side characters that you just kind of see in little bits here and there. They created a nice vibe that I was like, oh, that's a bummer. They're all about to die.
I will say that they to the vibe of the whole them being at camp, like they had a good rapport. Like they seemed like genuine friends, just fucking around and kicking the shit. And
right.
Like for the George Costanza bits, they all seemed like they had a nice friendly rapport, and that shone through.
Hell yeah,
so they did that well.
All right, gentlemen. Well, this is perfect, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Again, everybody in the chat, you guys are the coolest people that I know. Quick little announcement right now. If you're tuning in to Rockin' Robbie Live on Sunday night, you will find out the complete Horror Fest 2023 lineup. And guess what? Blood Splatter Chatter is going to be a part of it. So he's going to be announcing on PCP or on Rockin' Robbie Live Sunday on Pop Culture Philosophers. The entire lineup, Dylan's Horror Show, Pop Culture Philosophers, and Blood Splatter Chatter for Horror Fest 2023. So pretty stoked about it. I'll be, if you don't catch Robbie and his announcement, I'll go ahead and announce it when I'm back at some point, because the show you'll be seeing next week is a pre-recorded. We won't be here live, but me and my buddy Peter talked about Split from 2016. Great movie, great conversation I had with him. So tune in next week. At some point, I will come on. Maybe I'll just do a quick live pop in, and I will do my reveal for my Horror Fest lineup, which I spent days and weeks putting together, man. I just agonized over this thing, trying move it around like a fucking Jenga puzzle or whatever. It was a lot of fun actually to make. So again, check out Robbie's show on Sunday night to get the whole lineup. And if you missed that, I will announce it sometime in the near future. So Dylan's Horror Show, Pop Culture Philosophers, and Blood Splatter Chatter. So everybody out there, you guys are awesome, and we'll see you next time.
Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
Goodbye, my angel. I hope you have a good time, but of course you will.